Happy October, everybody. My name is Donna Green Goodman, and I would like to welcome you to our YouTube channel. This has been a long time coming. My partner and producer, Anthony Perkins, and I produced a series of videos about 7 or 8 years ago, and they have been playing on television during that time, and we are deciding that we can now upload them so that you all will have access to them. And I wanted to make sure that starting today I introduce you to who we are and what we're about. I'm Donna Green Goodman. I'm a health educator, graduate of Oakwood University in Home Economics Nutrition, and Loma Linda University, Masters of Public Health, Health Education. And I've been doing health education in the southeastern part of the United States for the last 30 years. So I'll let you know about how old I am. Currently, my husband and I own and operate Lifestyle Therapeutics, which is a wellness center in Huntsville, Alabama, where he does wellness physical therapy, I do wellness coaching, health education, and plant-based cooking classes. We are grateful for the patients that we get to take care of and the way people are learning how to improve their lives. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and that's the other reason that I'm doing this. I was diagnosed with invasive aggressive metastatic breast cancer 21 years ago and was told that I only had 2 to 5 years to live. And because of my background in health education and the fact that I had just left a job at Morehouse School of Medicine teaching people how to prevent cancer and begun a job with the Office of Nutrition for the state of Georgia, it was just kind of ironic for me that now I not only have breast cancer, but it's metastatic and it's aggressive, and my prognosis was very poor. And so, like many of you who are beginning to take a different kind of control of your health and your lifestyle choices, and may have actually seen the movie What the Health, you're facing an opportunity to make some changes. And I had my aha moment 21 years ago. Doctors wanted me to do chemotherapy, stem cell transplant, more chemotherapy, radiation, tamoxifen. And even if I did all of that, my prognosis was extremely poor. So because of my background, I started to investigate some things. And for the first time ever, I had to personalize it because I wasn't just teaching other people anymore. I was trying to save my life. And that's when I discovered a study that was being done by the National Cancer Institute, I believe, and they were investigating the value of phytochemicals in plant foods. And that just kind of spoke to me. And I knew that if you made different choices, you would get better, but I didn't know how much better I could get if I made the choices as a breast cancer patient. But I have discovered over the last 21 years how making these choices can impact whatever health condition that you have. And after watching the movie What the Health and having a personal opportunity to talk to Dr. Milton Mills, who was in the movie, and another colleague of mine who lives in London, Dr. Chidi Ngwaba, I'm 1000% convinced that this is the way to do it. So what we wanted to do for our first show here on YouTube was to let you see some things, because as we enter this phase of the year, there are a lot of holidays that we're experiencing. Halloween in this month, and next month is Thanksgiving, and the month after that is Christmas, and then there's New Year's. And to be honest, you know, we be eating the whole next 90 days. And if you have made a decision based on your interaction with your physician or with your health, or because you've seen the movie What the Health, some of you may have some concerns. As a matter of fact, I was with some friends this weekend who watched the movie, and a set of them are both physicians, and my other friends are different professionals, but they're ready to make these changes. But they said, but for Thanksgiving, I'm just go ahead and eat my other stuff. And I'm like, but you don't have to do that. And so what I want to introduce to you who are watching are options that you have in place in case you're looking forward to the holidays but are kind of timid about what you are able to eat. No one is paying me to produce or promote any of these products. But I couldn't do a grocery store tour, so I have you in my office, and I'm just going to show you the things, because in our clinic, when a patient comes, if they have diabetic neuropathy, which is my husband's specialty, he will do the treatment for them, and then I teach them how to make changes. And so often we'll have patients come into the very room where I am right now, and we'll sit down and go through these things because they're looking for alternatives to add to their diet. And then sometimes we go into the room next door where we have kitchen where we do cooking classes. And so just pretend that you're here with me, and this is a one-on-one session where I can teach you some things. Before I start showing the products, I don't want anybody to be confused. I am not promoting that you use a whole lot of processed stuff. So make that clear when you call your friends and tell them to watch. What I am suggesting is that if you're moving to a plant-based diet, the foundation of that diet should be fresh fruits, fresh nuts, fresh grains, and fresh vegetables. And if you need to replace foods that you're in the habit of eating, like milk products or meat products, something in place of eggs, I'm pointing those things out that you can use. Because in my work, I meet a variety of people. If you can, I would recommend, if you can afford the cleanest and the purest food, be that organic and non-genetically modified, then you get that. But if you can't afford that, then get the best that you can get. Because the best that you can get is better than any of the things that you're currently using or that you're transitioning from. So make sure y'all say that when you're talking about this girl on the internet now. You know, I want to be clear. Fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables form the foundation. And from those foods, you can add some other things. And sometimes, depending on where you are, I had one patient who said, I'm not cooking that food, Donna. Just tell me where I can go and it's already prepared, which means that she's eating more processed food, but that's where she is in her life. I have other patients who say, well, based on my job, I just can't do it. And these are the fast food restaurants that I go to. So I walk them through what they can get at a fast food restaurant that's healthier for them. And I'm trying to meet people on the journey where they are. One other thing before we start going through our foods. I come to this from a place of health education as a professional. I believe in a plant-based diet as the foundation for better health. I understand that many people who are vegans do it from the perspective of the sanctity of the animal and not wanting to hurt the animal. And that's a really good thing. And I interact with a lot of people that way. However, the place that I come from is that my body is a temple. And I don't want to put anything in this system that is going to be harmful to myself, 20-some years ago, to any babies that I may have had, to the people that I love, and the animals get the benefit of what I am doing. And so wherever you are on the journey, wherever you're coming from, kudos to you. I'm just happy to know that you're on the journey and that you can make some of these improvements. So when you think about the rest of this month and going into next month and Christmas, a lot of us are looking to eat some of our traditional foods. And some of the first things that we stop eating when we come to a plant-based diet is the meat, of course. I have discovered in many of the markets today, and they didn't have all this stuff 21 years ago when I started eating this way, you can find a variety of foods from a variety of people who make them. Tofurkey is one brand, Light Life is another brand, Boca, Gardein has some good stuff. The Beyond Meat is really good, and these are available. You don't have to go to a health food store necessarily because a lot of your mainstream stores are carrying at least some of them, and these are things that you could consider using for that Thanksgiving meal. Now, when a plant-based person is invited to dinner and it's the first year that they're doing this, they're just happy to be at dinner and not have all the meat and everything. So don't be offended or feel like you can't honor what they're doing. Just make some food for them that doesn't have the meat products in it. My parents actually became vegetarian when I was about 10, 12 months old, and we went to my daddy's people's house for Thanksgiving, and they had everything on the table. The ham, the turkey, the chicken. They may have had some chitlins now that I think about it. I don't know for sure. But the mac and cheese and all that sort of stuff. And my parents decided that they were going to be vegetarian at that holiday. They were lacto-ovo at the time, so they still decided to eat some of the foods that had dairy products in them, but they were not eating the meat anymore. Well, you know, the family gave them down the country, as we can do. However, my aunties and my grandma decided that they would honor the choices going forward, so they just made, whenever they made cabbage, they didn't put the meat in ours. If they made lima beans, they didn't put the meat in it. And that was a way to honor what we're doing. And so as you begin this journey, and if you have to bring something for the dinner or you're going to a dinner, just let them know if there's no meat in the vegetables, that's fine. And if that's a problem for you, I can bring some things myself. So what do you bring? Traditionally, for Thanksgiving, we're talking about a turkey. There is one that is on the market that is by the company Veggie USA. And we got this maybe about 8 or 10 years ago for the first time. And let me tell you something. It comes with a cavity in it. It's all plant-based. I made my own cornbread dressing. I stuffed that thing. But first, I took the turkey out of the bag and I marinated it in pineapple juice and onions and garlic and some other herbs overnight. And then I made the dressing and I put the dressing in the center of it and I put it in my roasting pan. And then I put onions and celery and potatoes all around it, and I made an herb based that I could baste it with, and it just baked up beautifully. We may actually be able to post some pictures on my Twitter feed. I can do that, or on my Instagram page, and that's Still Shoutin', STILLSHOUTIN at Twitter or at Instagram. Let me tell you something. We took out the knife and we were carving that thing, and it was delicious to us, and it was easy to do. So if you are a person who is not intimidated by doing this, this is one of the options. It comes with its own gravy and a rice that you could put inside of it. But I was raised in the South. I like cornbread dressing, and that's what I did. Another thing that you could do is just the meatballs. You could either make them yourself, or you could buy some that are on the market. And then the other thing that I'm really enjoying is the Beyond Meat products. You could take their burger and make that into a meatloaf, or you could make it into patties, because you get 2 patties in here and they're really thick. So you could take it and make it into smaller patties if you wanted to, or into a meatloaf, and put barbecue sauce on it or curry or whatever, because you're not trying to necessarily have exactly what you would normally have. You just want to have something else that's on the table. And these are some amazing ideas that can do it. If you're going to do something that's relative to turkey, one of the secrets that I learned from my mom actually was how to use asparagus juice in cooking vegetarian meat substitutes if you want it to taste like turkey. And so the juice from the asparagus in your gravy, in your baste, would add a turkey flavor. The other thing that's really good when you're doing vegetarian meat substitutes is to have some flavorings for them. And for me, for when I'm making the vegetarian meats substitutes, or if I'm doing savory vegetables like collards or kale or cabbage or broccoli for that matter, or if I'm doing any beans of any kind, I like to have a smoke flavor. So I use a product called Bacon, B-A-K-O-N, and you can use that in place of your turkey wings, your chicken wings, your whatever animal that you would put in there. And it gives that smoke flavor. You could also use liquid smoke. In addition to that, it seems to me as a home economist that there are a lot of recipes on the market that tend to use chicken broth as a major flavorer or flavor enhancer. And so there are several on the market that are chicken-like in flavor but don't have any chicken fat or meat in it. One of them is by Imagine, which is a vegetarian no chicken broth. I actually used the Better Than Bouillon vegetarian one that's like chicken last night in something that I did for my husband, and we both were fighting over the dish. And then there's another one that I have used historically called McKay's Chicken Style Instant Broth and Seasoning, which is very much like a chicken bouillon, but it is made from plant products. They have several varieties of this. They have a chicken one and a beef one. But be careful to read the label, because some are extremely high in sodium. Others have dairy products in them, and I tend to buy the one that is the vegan special. You can also use these not chicken cubes, which I found at the regular grocery store. And depending on where you live, many grocery stores, if they don't have it, they will get it for you, because so many more people now are asking for foods that they enjoy that are healthy for them. And to their good, a lot of your grocers are actually honoring the requests of those people. The other thing that I like to use for flavoring and gravies is the Bragg's liquid aminos, and I prefer to use this over soy sauce because it's not fermented. And the Kitchen Bouquet browning sauce is what also gives darker color to things, if that's something that you want to use. So these are how you can help to flavor these foods. In addition to that, you could also, if you don't want to use any of these vegetarian meat products, you can make things out of beans. I know that garbanzos are very popular because they make the falafels and the patties. You could make pinto bean patties, you could make lentil patties, any of those sorts of things, and fill them with breadcrumbs and onions and bell peppers and garlic. And these seasonings here, you could use flaxseed to hold it together because that kind of thickens up when you heat it. And then it would make a nice patty that you could bake or brown in a little oil if that's what you wanted to do, and then make a gravy to go over that. And the thing that's so funny to me, As I began to live this way with my family, we would get invited out to places, and if my food looked as good as everybody else's, everybody else was trying to eat it. So I want you to know that if you decide to bring any of this, and that might be a great way to do the holiday, just volunteer to bring something yourself. When it looks good, smells good, tastes good, and doesn't look weird, people will go in it. And I think for families who have relatives like I do, who have some kind of health condition, diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, and they're on a special diet that the doctor has given them, we often tend to isolate them and their food for the holiday, and they can't have nothing that tastes good. It doesn't have to be that way. You can make the vegetarian meat substitutes. You can control how much sodium you put in them if you don't want to do all the processing. You can make desserts for them using fruit juices instead of sugar. So Big Mama can also have potato pie. You can make pound cakes for them that don't have all the butter and the eggs and everything in them that traditionally do. And what we do in our house now is we make strawberry shortcake. And I don't know how many of you have heard, but there is now this thing called aquafaba, which means bean water. And scientists and cooks have discovered that when you take the water off of beans, the protein that's in it acts as egg white. And you can put this in your blender and add vanilla flavoring and cream of tartar and some natural sugar and put it in your tabletop KitchenAid and let that run for about 12-15 minutes, and you will have a bowl full of meringue that you can use for your strawberry shortcake. You can put it on top of lemon meringue pies. There's just so many ways to be creative and not be afraid. I recently did a live cooking class, Cooking Up Good Health with Donna Green Goodman live, and I had some people from across the country, and they were at varying levels of learning, but they could see me as I was cooking, and they were cooking in their kitchens. And what I wanted to do was to build their confidence and use products for the recipes that we were doing that they were familiar with. And as they begin to see how you can take whole grain flour and some oil and water and salt and mix it together and it comes together in a dough, people are like, well, shoot, now I can make pecan pie for the holidays, or I can make apple pie for the holidays. So do not be afraid. Start to think what you want to do and how you want it to taste, and experiment. One of the resources for you I can let you know about is the second book that I've written, Cooking Up Good Health with Donna Green Goodman, the recipe collection. This goes along with the cooking show, and you'll be able to actually see videos here on our channel of those shows. In addition to that, you can go to the website stillshoutin.com, stillshoutin.com, where you can actually order it, or you can just go straight to paypal.me/Cookin Up Good Health, COOKIN Up Good Health. And if you do it that way, the book is $20 and add $5 for shipping and handling, and make sure that you put your full mailing address on there and I can get it out to you. There's amazing recipes in here, including the mac and cheese recipe, which in my tradition better be on the table when you come to the holidays this time of year. Now, when it comes to making things like mac and cheese, the cheese and the milk that you traditionally put in it, of course, we were clear after watching What the Health that it's not so good for you. So there are a variety of things on the market that you can use. And I used to make it using cashews. That's one way that you can do it. The other way that you can do it is to cook potatoes and carrots together and onions and flavoring in some water and add nutritional yeast and some other flavorings to that, and that can make like a creamy sauce. But because my tradition is that 9 by 12 dish with the cheese on top and the creamy goodness inside, my mom and I worked really hard to come up with a recipe that mimicked that a lot more, because I want everybody to be able to know that the way that I eat and the way that you can eat is really good for you. And so I've experimented with a number of cheeses, and when I first started out, they didn't melt as well 20 years ago, but they have definitely changed over the years. And now you can get a variety of brands. The Follow Your Heart brand, personally, is one of my favorite ones. They have shreds, a variety of shreds, cheddar, mozzarella, you name it. They have blocks of cheese. They have slices of cheese. They have Parmesan, mozzarella, smoked Gouda, which is my favorite. They have like a jalapeno, slices, so many things, and they all melt. Now, because they're not made from animal products, they are made from plant products, they are not as salty as your traditional cheeses, because one of the reasons that cheese tastes so good is because the saltiness of it, and then of course the way that they process it, and the longer that it ages or molds, the stronger the flavor that it has. So you might need to add a little more salt than you normally would if you're going to use these cheeses, because the saltiness is not there, and that's probably what your palate is used to. But if you're comfortable with it the way that it is, go ahead and use it. Another brand is Daya, and the Daya slices are just amazing for sandwiches, cold sandwiches, like cold cut kind of sandwiches, and if you want to make grilled cheese sandwiches. I actually had these in our cooking class, and we made tomato soup using cashews for the cream, and then everybody made a grilled cheese sandwich, and the cheese melted beautifully on whole grain bread. So that's another option for you. And then Go Veggie also has some cheeses that you just look at the label, look for the vegan one. There's one that says lactose free, but it still has some of the properties of animals in it. The casein, I believe, is still there, and some of your milk fat. But the vegan one doesn't have any of those ingredients, and they melt beautifully, and they make amazing macaroni and cheese. The people that I was with this past weekend, my schoolmates, Derek Ramey and Dr. David Bettany and their wives, we were all together, and Gerald Kibble, and we talked about this mac and cheese and how you can do it. When you make the mac and cheese, make sure that you choose the cheeses that you like. I use a combination of the mozzarella, the cheddar, provolone Swiss, and the smoked Gouda is what I'm doing now. And I also like to add some sour cream to it, which gives it a creaminess, and then I will use an Earth Balance or some other kind of vegan margarine, and then a plain non-dairy milk. But when you put the cheese on top of the macaroni to bake it, you need to cover it because it melts differently than animal cheese does. And if you want it to be good and melty, keep it covered the entire time that it's baking. And then, like if in my tradition, you want some brown spots on it before you serve it, then turn the oven off and turn it to broil, and then just watch as it broils it beautifully and makes it nice and brown. The longer that it stays in the oven, for those of you who I like that crispy part, it'll get crispy. My husband asked me this morning, why did you make that mac and cheese in the iron skillet yesterday? I said, well, I was just kind of experimenting. But of course, it got kind of crunchy around the edge, which is something else that I was also interested in doing. So these are some of the tips just about the main dishes that are at the meal. I've already mentioned the fact that you can use these flavorings. So if you're cooking your collards or your kale, your mustards or your turnip greens, make sure that you put plenty of onions and garlic and bell pepper in there. I will sometimes put some red pepper flakes, and that makes those delicious. This time of year, your greens, once the frost has hit them, they literally melt up in the pot, so you don't have to cook them as long compared to the greens that you grow in the summertime. And I think in the African American culture, we know what the green is supposed to taste like and feel like on our tongue. And so sometimes we cook greens a lot longer than they need to be cooked because we're trying to get that texture. Well, the secret is those are probably summer greens. Your winter greens, once the frost hits them, you kind of raise some hot water over them and they're pretty much tender. So know that as you're cooking them, that will probably happen. Now, when it comes to utilizing different milks that you want to put in things, whatever brand that you are used to buying, store brands or national brands, you have a lot of options that you can choose. I want you to know that one of the ones that I like to use is a store brand, and you can use almond or soy or cashew or coconut. Some stores now are making combinations of them. You can use rice milk. All of those are excellent depending on what your taste buds are. During this time of the year, the holiday season, especially for the month of October and November when you're making pumpkin things and sweet potato things, the silk nog, I found some this week, so it's out now. It's only going to be available until like the 1st of January, but this is like magic. You can put it in anything that you usually would use evaporated milk or condensed milk in, and the flavor is just beautiful for pumpkin and sweet potato pies. I also use it when I'm going to make a cake, if I'm going to make ice cream out of it, but that's only if my husband has left any in the refrigerator, because when I bring it home, he drinks a whole quart in like 24 hours because it's so delicious. He also likes sometimes to warm up his pie and pour the eggnog over it, the silk nog. And so that's another option that you could do as well. The other thing, of course, that you could use is the silk creamer. And this is a brand that my family likes to use, but there are several other brands that make creamers with different flavors. and those flavors can come from coconut milk or almond milk as well. So this time of year, there should be plenty on the market that you can introduce yourself to. And if you get the small containers, you can actually spend less money to sample it and then know which one it is you want to use. At the end of the meal, usually people like to curl up with a cup of coffee. Because of my diagnosis, I decided that I was not going to do anything with caffeine anymore. I didn't do coffee, but I did an awful lot of chocolate. The caffeine in there changes the breast tissue, increases your risk for fibroid adenomas, which are non-cancerous tumors, and those can increase your risk for cancerous tumors. And some of us don't get that far in the disease progression. We just have fibrocystic breast disease. And many times you go to your OBGYN, that's the first thing that they want to know. How much coffee or caffeine do you consume? So this is one of the products that you can use in place of coffee. This is like an instant coffee, Roma. And then the other one, I bought this can years ago. My son and I started trying it together. And it's by Ticino. Nowadays, you find it in your health food stores in a bag, just like you would normal coffee. And this comes in a variety of flavors, and this one you can actually brew. So these are some other options that you could use as far if you were interested in replacing the coffee and not doing so much of the caffeine. If you wanted to make something in our cooking class a few weeks ago, we made a quiche. And you needed to have eggs and milk and cheese and all that. We've already talked about the cheeses that you could use, the veggie meats. I think some of them use sausage. I use the veggie ham. The Asian grocery stores have an awful lot of options in vegetarian meat substitutes, chicken and shrimp and crab and you name it, they have plenty of it. So those are some other places for you to look for. When we lived in Atlanta, we used to go to a couple of the Asian restaurants that were there, and one of them was next to an Asian market, and we used to go in the Asian market and purchase every kind of veggie meat that we wanted to and cook it up the way that we enjoyed it. So that's an option for you too. If you're interested then in using some kind of egg in your baking, I recommend using egg replacer, energy egg replacer, and I don't think I have a box of that with me today, but the energy egg replacer I use for baking like cornbread sorts of things. If I were doing cookies, I might use a little of that. I would also use flaxseed or flaxseed gel for baking. You can use applesauce. You can hit me up. You can either go to my Twitter page, my Instagram page, or you can email me directly, ltxclinic@gmail.com, and I can send you some other suggestions. Applesauce is one of those things. Then there's this amazing new product that's on the market by Follow Your Heart, who makes all these cheeses and a lot of mayonnaises. And this is your vegan egg. Some of us were talking over the weekend about government food. And some of us grew up eating government food when we were in college, if our parents were, kind of in a place where they needed to have some government support. And this pretty much is the same concept. It's a powdered egg that you mix with water, and you can scramble it, you can bake with it. I used it to do some dipping of some vegetarian meat in it the other day. My husband loves to scramble it and makes the best omelets out of it. So this is an option for you. The other thing that you can also use is your favorite brand of tofu. This is a store brand, but you can use the water packed tofu as a scrambled egg replacement. And I like to use it whenever I'm making lasagna. I will make patties out of it. And then I like to use the silken tofu for things that are softer, like my cheesecake, or I would use it to make ice cream out of, or I would use it in salad dressings to make a creamy salad dressing. And so this is another option that you can use as well. When it comes to the margarines, Earth Balance is a brand that I really, really enjoy. Depending on where you live, there are a variety of those. Some are completely soy-free, so just go to your grocery store and look for the one that you want to try. They also have baking sticks that resemble shortening, and so that's another option for you. And then my girlfriend Bridget introduced me to this vegan butter that I got at the health food store. Has an okay flavor, and I like to use it primarily if I'm doing popcorn. I like the flavor that it gives to the popcorn. Okay, let's see, what else do I need to tell you? The other milks that you can use, of course, are coconut milk. When I taught at Oakwood University, I taught the vegetarian cuisine class, which was a totally plant-based course. And I met a lot of my students who were African American, Caribbean, and came from all the islands of the sea. And as the African Americans were making stuff, they wanted to replace traditional milk. when the Caribbeans came in the room, they pretty much used coconut milk. And so coconut milk is another option that you can use as well in your baking for anything. Very recently, I had a patient who liked Hawaiian rolls. And she said, well, I know they're not good for me. So I said, well, let's look it up and see what the ingredients are. We did. And I was able to substitute the ingredients, the not so good ingredients, for the better ingredients. And we used coconut milk in there. We used pineapple juice. And in addition to using your garbanzo bean juice in order to make the whipped topping or to make hummus, you can take 3 tablespoons are equivalent to 1 egg, and we use the garbanzo bean juice as the egg in our Hawaiian rolls. And let me tell you something. We made this online a month ago. People in Charlottesville, out in Texas, Atlanta, Georgia, and everybody's rolls were just amazing. They could not believe it, and our spouses and our family members kept coming through the kitchen trying to see what in the world was going on. So if you're interested in that, hit me up. I can release that recipe to you as well. Another thing that happens at my holiday gatherings is salads, potato salad and macaroni salad. And it's kind of hard to make that if you don't have a good mayonnaise. There are 2 brands of mayonnaise that I like to use. One is Hellmann's, the vegan version. The other is Just Mayo. And Just Mayo also makes a lot of other products, including salad dressings, Thousand Island, Russian, I can't think of the other ones, but there's a bunch of them. Look them up, and this will definitely add to what you're doing. Now, if you're making potato salad and you want to have what looks like egg in it, you can take some of your firm tofu, mash it up, add some turmeric to it, which is give it this yolk looking color, and then find yourself some black salt, which will give it the eggy flavor, and then you can fold that into the potato salad. Because we don't want people sitting there thinking, I don't want to eat Donna's food. I know it's good for me, but it looked a hot mess. We want them to say, oh, I didn't know that was her food, you know, as they're going back for the second helping. And I can help you do that if you're paying attention to all the stuff that I'm saying. Now, when you're going to make your pasta dishes, I recommend whole grain pasta. Whole wheat is my favorite. I believe that it's still something that you can eat. If you have a challenge with gluten and wheat gluten, then you can get the gluten-free. And many of the gluten-free products that I am seeing in your traditional stores actually are made from corn or rice, so that removes the gluten burden that you may have. And just choose whichever one you want. One thing that I recommend when it comes to making that mac and cheese, I used to use a soy kind of pasta that looked like the traditional pasta. I don't necessarily use the whole wheat pasta the very first time I do it for a group of non-vegans or non-whole plant-based people, because they'd be looking at that saying, I don't want that either. So you want to use a pasta that resembles more closely the traditional pasta. Just make sure that it's as whole grain as you can make it. Then, of course, you want to use whole grain rices, and if you're going to use a traditional long cooking one, you can cook that, bake that in the oven is one way to do it, or you can use the instant. The instant always turns out dry, and you don't have to worry that people are going to recognize it or be turned off by it. And then other ways that you can do it is make it yellow with turmeric, or red with paprika and tomato sauce, and that will help. This is all I use when I make Caribbean rice and peas. Any rice, this is the only rice that we eat. And then, of course, your whole grain pastas. Now, when it comes down to the dessert, there are a number of brands of ice cream that are on the market now. This used to be my favorite brand, and I had about 6 of these in my freezer when I was diagnosed with breast cancer and decided to give it up. And I was at the place where I didn't want to eat it, so I just threw it all away. That may not be your story. But if you want to replace it, you can look for the Breyers, you can look for Haagen-Dazs, you can look for Ben & Jerry's, you can look for store brands, you can look for Rice Dream. Any of those are good options. In addition to that, in my book, Cooking Up Good Health, there's also a recipe that you can make yourself, and that's the one that I use most times in our home because I believe I've perfected it and my family enjoys it. Strawberry is probably one of our favorite. I like to do a maple walnut carrot chip. I like to do Reese's peanut butter cup one that's really good, and you can do that. In addition to making this, you could make like a frozen yogurt, and there are some non-dairy yogurts that are on the market. One is by Silk, the other is by Daya. You could add that to it. And then I have a cousin who was at a place where he was making some changes due to heart disease, and he didn't want to do a lot of this, so I made a sorbet for him using like a frozen bag of fruit. He likes strawberry, and then I used a can of frozen white grape raspberry concentrate. I blended that in my Vitamix, and he had sorbet. My girlfriend Jackie found a delicious mango coconut sorbet that she did, and we tend to use the ice cream machine that has a cylinder that you can put in the freezer, and then it's available to use to make ice cream or sorbet or any of that sort of stuff. In addition to the book Cooking Up Good Health, I also write the column, the recipe column for Message Magazine, and you are welcome to go to their website, see how you can subscribe to the magazine, messagemagazine.com. Message Magazine is the oldest Christian African-American magazine in the country that has been in continuous production, and from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I have been blessed to be able to write the recipe column. So a lot of the recipes that I recommend to my patients and communities, when I do things in the community, you can find them there if you subscribe to them. And of course, if you really are interested in getting the book, you can do that too. Let me see, is there anything else that I want to say to you? Whatever your motivation for moving to a plant-based diet, do not be intimidated by anyone. If my parents had listened to all their relatives, we'd have been down the creek or up the creek, wherever it is you go when somebody messes you up. But it's just plain good sense. Even if you go back to the 4 food group model, they still encourage you to eat a good amount of whole foods. And so when you move to this whole food thing, what we are seeing with our patients, in addition to what happened to me with the breast cancer, because it was my decision as to what treatment I was going to take, and I decided only to do radiation. I did not do all the other stuff. That's your choice. And if a person decides to do all the other stuff, they definitely can benefit by using this. But we're seeing patients who have hypertension, diabetes, arthritis, complications of diabetes, make these choices and things improve. And some of the first things that we see when patients make these decisions is their bowel movements improve. They're not as heavy. One of the things that we laugh about in my tradition is the itis that you get after you eat the traditional food. When you eat the traditional food in a healthier way, you don't have the itis because the food is not full of all that sugar, all that fat, all that animal protein. So make sure that if this is the route that you've decided to take, do not be intimidated. This is one of the best decisions you could have ever made for your life and for your family. The other thing is experiment. Don't get stuck with something if it doesn't turn out right. And this is what happened to me when I came home and decided that this is what our family was going to do. I started making stuff, and my husband and my son, who was then 7 years old, Mommy, this is good. Donna, this is great. Some days it's like, Mama, throw that out. That was horrible. And my husband never used to say that. He would just leave it on his plate, and I would know this is not one that you want to do again. So be creative. Find other people who are making the decisions that you're making and get to know them. I'm not sure where you are as you're watching this, but I know here in Huntsville, Alabama, there's a good population of people who are interested in plant-based eating. So we make those connections. In Atlanta, where I lived for 12 years, the Black Vegetarian Society of Georgia exists, and they have some really great resources. Very recently, I was in Oakland, California, and I got to eat at a vegan restaurant there, solely vegan, which had amazing, delicious food. I have eaten at one in San Antonio, Texas, called Green. There is a really good one in New Orleans, the name of which escapes me at this moment, but I'm going to try and bring it back. In Atlanta, there's Soul Vegetarian, there's Harmony, there is Cafe Sunflower. There's another vegan, soul food kind of vegan restaurant in Decatur that my students and friends are talking about that's really good. So you have some really good options. Another thing that you could do is start a cooking group where those friends of yours who are interested in eating plant-based can all cook one dish and you all come together and sample it. If you are a young mother with children, find other mothers who are interested in doing it. Go online, go to Pinterest, go to the interweb, as my friends call it, and just put in things that you like. I certainly believe in the value of it, but I also am interested in making sure that when you're making the switch, that you are not neglecting your culture. And many times when people are told about a plant-based diet, they're like, I'm going to have to eat grass and tree bark. No, you don't. Or some of them will say, well, I'm going to have to eat hummus and I'm going to have to eat you know, I don't even want to say, it just makes me sad. As an African American woman who, through the grace of God, was able to defeat cancer through my choices, I want you to know that in your culture already, you are already eating a lot of stuff that's already good for you. What you need to do is to learn how to make it so that it tastes good. That's all. Collards, kale, black-eyed peas, pinto beans, blueberries, raspberries, peaches, that's stuff that we eat. Watermelon, you name it. We eat a whole lot more plant stuff. And then when I think about my Caribbean friends who are doing mango and papaya and coconut milk and all that sort of stuff, you already got a lot of stuff within your culture that you can start with. And then if you want to go and make some hummus, I can show you how to make that too. But I want your family and loved ones to know how much you care for them through the changes that you've made and how their health is improving. Because literally, when you do this, your health gets better. I can't think of anything that I want to say. I'm looking at my producer. Can you think of anything that I have missed? We seem to have covered it all. One other thing, yes, I do. When you're talking about use of sugar, this is one of the brands that I get from the big store, Costco. You want to look for what we used to call turbinado sugar. And I usually have, when I'm talking to my patients, I have like a 6-foot sugar cane that I like to show them. It takes about 3 to 5 feet of sugar cane to make 1 teaspoon of sugar. And so you really are not, it just doesn't make sense because you have to use so much of it if you're looking at it that way. However, as you're making the transition, reducing the consumption of sugar that you eat also is important. I do not use white sugar at all anymore ever because part of the processing includes being pushed through bone char. And usually it's bones of pigs, which of course offends me personally because that's not how I live. But when you take the sugar cane, put it in the juicer, get the juice out of it, and granulate it, it's kind of browny blonde in color. Science goes back and forth about whether there are any benefits to it or not. I believe that the benefits are minuscule, but they're there because when you're eating it, the darker natural sugars, you can smell the molasses in it, and there's benefit in the molasses, iron being one of them and some B vitamins. So decide which one of those you're going to use, but I would let the sugars be the last thing that I use. I would start with using whole fruit, then I would use fruit juice, and then I would use dried fruit, and then I might use things like stevia and honey, and I would use the other natural sugars. And if I'm making something where I want the product to be a lighter white color, I would use the one that's lighter in color. If the color doesn't matter, then I would use the one that is darker in color. So you heard me say honey, and I know you're wondering, but she's a vegan. Again, my motivation comes from a different place. And clearly, for those of you who celebrate the African American tradition of worship and the Word of God, in the Word of God, it says, eat honey, just not too much or it make you sick. And when we read about John the Baptist in the New Testament, he was eating locusts, which were not the bug, it was the locust bean or the carrot bean and honey. In addition to that, there are a lot of health benefits that they are discovering when one consumes honey. And so, again, that's your choice, because I just want you to get to the place where you can walk into a room and say, yes, I'm plant-based, and this is why I'm doing it, and this is what I'm doing. And if I have to go to Dollar Tree to find it, fine. If I could go to some top-of-the-line gourmet store to find it, that's fine too. But what I'm trying to do is forage out a better health outcome for myself. I've been a community health educator for over 30 years, and the disparities in chronic diseases for African Americans is just ridiculous. When I spoke with Dr. Chidi Ngwaba and Dr. Milton Mills on our course we had, they were sharing how as they minister to patients, they're getting well. They're getting well. And then they discover that there are other things beneath that that need to be addressed, because we all know drinking alcohol, eating all this bad food ain't good for us, but it's comfort for us. And so if we can feel better, we can address what's beneath why we're making the choices that we're making. And Dr. Chidi says when his patients come, they're healed. Dr. Milton Mills shared with us on our call that he has met patients, African American in particular, who know that they are allergic to dairy products, but they continue to eat them because the government says that you need to eat them, which is ridiculous. So if you're allergic to it, you don't have to do it. Dr. Milton Mills has also noticed when he was taking care of AIDS patients that he would often speak to them before he started the medical regimen and ask them, would they be willing to do a plant-based diet for like 10 days? And as they did it, every single time T-cell count went up, viral load went down. So wherever you are in the journey, if you're on medication, being prescribed medication, you decide if indeed you want to do more than that. And as you make the changes in your life, the physician can adjust the medications. One of my favorite texts is that God's greatest wish is that you prosper and be in good health even as your soul prospers. And we have a strong tradition of worship in our community. We got that down pat. But he also says he wants us to be in good health the same way. And so as you have listened to me go on today and you're watching What the Health and somebody at your job is suggesting and your child's doctor says that he or she is allergic to something, your husband is having erectile dysfunction, you're having some problems, decide, you know what, today is going to be the beginning of the rest of my life. And I'm going to look for other options that I can embrace and I can share and I can receive the great gift of health and be a blessing to other people. I hope you've enjoyed this time with me. I love to talk. And I'm hoping that you will continue to tune in, subscribe, put any questions that you have for me at the bottom, and I will be listening out for those so that I can answer them and direct you to other resources. Tell your friends about it. You know how in church we say, tell your neighbor? I want you to tell your neighbor that the Lifestyle Therapeutics channel is now on YouTube, where we're always cooking up good health. And Donna Green Goodman is here to help guide you through that process. I want you to keep coming back because we're going to upload the other cooking shows for you that are about 30 minutes in length. And I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy watching them and learning how to cook some things. And I want to hear from you that as you make these changes, you're getting better so that I can tell other people. One last story and then I'm going to shut this down. We have a patient who I met almost 2 years ago now. He came by the clinic at the recommendation of another patient. And he was having problems with his sugar levels. He's a retired professor from Alabama A&M University, and he literally was doing all the good stuff, but he couldn't get the sugars down. So I gave him some suggestions and talked to him about his health, and he decided that he was going to go plant-based. He has been coming to the clinic for the last 2 years, and whenever he would get a report from his physician, he would bring it to us. Well, one day he stopped by. We were about to close. I need to tell you something. And he says he had just been to his physician, and he gets back in the room, and the doctor's taking too long to talk to him. He just kept looking at the record. And our friend said, is there something wrong? He says, no, what are you doing? And the guy says, well, I've converted to a plant-based diet. He says, well, I want you to keep doing whatever you're doing because our lab reports indicate that your kidneys have turned around and they're heading in the right direction. You don't have to be a statistic. We can change the imprint of our health in this country, in this community, whether you can do it. You can do it. And I want to be a part of that for you. And if I don't have all the answers, I want to be sure that I can point you to where the answers are. I'm Donna Green Goodman. I'm coming to you from our office, Lifestyle Therapeutics, which is in Huntsville, Alabama, where my husband, Eddie Goodman, Tuskegee grad, is the physical therapist, and he does some miracles with people who have diabetic neuropathy as well as a variety of other physical therapy challenges. I do the wellness coaching, health education, plant-based cooking classes. You have now joined a part of our family, and I want you to stay on this page or follow me on Twitter, Still Shoutin', or Instagram, Still Shoutin', or go on Facebook to our Lifestyle Therapeutics page where we put information up and newsletters and all that sort of stuff, and then tell somebody else about it, because I believe this is what y'all need to get through the holidays. And then in January, you won't have so much confession to do because you will be ahead of the group. And then you can be the one to join other people who are starting off their new year in a more healthful way. And you will already have the information that you can need. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope that you will continue to tune in, subscribe, and share our channel with others. Have a great, healthy holiday. I'll be cooking up good health. Hope you will be too. That's it.